I connected, and when I hit him, he fell and hit his head on the ground and went into a coma. I ended up going to prison for almost 2 years in Florida. And so was 19 years old at the time, got out when I was 21, and I just went and started knocking doors. I didn't have a website, I didn't have any reviews. I knew that I just wanted to help people. And I felt like solar was the path that I could take to really make a difference. All things that are amazing and great are always done in team. Nothing is ever really done alone. We always try to shine the light on the way to do it the right way. Because solar is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a long-term, smart money plan. It is an investment. You can use your mistakes as fuel to go as far as you possibly can. Properly explaining how solar billing works, right? People around the country that don't know as much as they should, they just think, oh, I'm gonna get solar and every bill of the year is gonna be eliminated. That's not how it works.
Welcome back to another episode of Business Hats Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, and I know it's going to be a very controversial episode because we're talking about solar. I have Blake Ambrester, the founder of Solar Bear, and he also have a few other businesses, wears a lot of business hats, and we'll talk about it. Thank you so much for flying in from Tampa, Florida, all the way to Minneapolis. Glad to have you here, brother.
Dimitri, thanks for having me. Really grateful to be here.
I want to start from your story because you have a very unique one. I'm a storyteller. I believe that we do business with other people because of their personality. It's not always about value proposition. It's because of people, the owners, the employees. And I want you start with your story. How did you get in the solar industry and construction industry? What did you do before? Give me everything all the way from the beginning.
All right. So fresh out of college, working in nightclubs as a bouncer, 18 years old. Big fight breaks out. We're kicking guys out. And the group that we kicked out runs back in the club, and one of the guys tries to sucker punch me. And I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I just duck, and I swing back, and I connected. And when I hit him, he fell and hit his head on the ground and went into a coma. And, I was a full-time college student with a full-time job. I'd never been in trouble before. And, I ended up going to prison for almost 2 years in Florida. And so I was 19 years old at the time, got out when I was 21, went back into the nightclub industry because it was easy to get a job.
I want to pause there. Just my own curiosity. Is it pretty common? I would feel like if I take that job, I would be protected. I'm doing the right thing. I don't have a criminal record. How did it all play out? Like, how did you get jail time for doing your job?
Well, when it first happened, I hired an attorney, and I got on what's called a pretrial release. I went back home to St. Petersburg, Florida. I fought the case for 15 months. That entire time, my attorney's telling me, hey, listen, you've never been in trouble. You've never had a run-in with the police. You're going to get probation, and this is going to be gone. Well, 2 or 3 weeks before my probationary hearing, I get a call from my attorney saying that some new witnesses come forward a year and a half later saying that I sucker punched him and that he's going to testify that he saw it. And obviously this wasn't true, and we found out later on that, potentially their attorney was putting together evidence to make their story more viable when it wasn't. So my attorney's like, look, with this new evidence, I can't beat this. If you lose, you're going to go to prison for 5 years. So you're going to need to take a plea of 18 months prison time here in Florida. And at that time, I was already working full-time. I had been dating a girl for 2 years. Wow. And, it was just a very massive gut punch. You're a young man. You're trying to figure your path out. And my path was that I needed to go sit down in prison for a little bit. And, most people would say, gosh, that's so horrible. And yes, it was. It was a rough experience. But
tell me more about it. What was the worst thing in jail?
Well, the first thing is just being stripped of your freedoms. Coming from the greatest country in the world, having the freedoms that we have and having those taken away from you, it really puts life into perspective. It really gives you another view of what the rest of the world is dealing with. It doesn't have the freedoms that we have. The people that you're in there with, a lot of the people are, call them career criminals, so they get out of prison and they go back and they get out and they go back again and again. So it's almost like a game to them, right? So that, and then the worst part about all of it is you're in Florida with no air conditioning, with no heat, with 72 other guys in the same pod, and the food is absolutely terrible. It costs about 25 cents a day to feed an inmate in the state of Florida.
25 cents a day.
25 cents a day. So for 25 cents,
What
that's
ca-
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
What kind of nutrients? What do they feed you?
You know, the most nutrient things you would get were like collard greens out of their little farm that they have in the back where all of the inmates are working. So you'd get some vegetables out of the ground, but everything else was fake. Textured vegetable protein. It was like these pellets they would put into water. They would swell up. They'd put a gravy on them, and literally on the bag it says "not for human consumption."
Really?
Right. So
Is it legal? How do they get away with it?
yeah,
It's a government.
it's the government, right? They can do whatever they want. You know, once you're in prison in the state in the U.S., you are government property. You have a serial number, and that's how they manage you. It is a business, right? The states get funding for every inmate. So if they're spending 25 cents a day, they're getting funded $50 a day for every inmate that's in there. It is a very big business.
Wow. You're pretty fit. Did you stay fit in jail?
That is how I passed the time. I worked out as much as I possibly could. There was no weights in there, just a pull-up bar and a clay track that you could walk around, do lunges, squats, pull-ups, push-ups, and you know, I would just
All you need to be fit.
that's all you need, honestly. And you know, that helped the time pass. And you know, there were other guys in there like me who had made a first-time mistake. My bunkie was another young man who was working in Panama City Beach. His boss let him get drunk at 19 years old at the bar. He was a barback, driving home, accidentally killed somebody, and got a 10-year prison sentence. So I was in there with him. Really great guy, made a mistake, and you know, if you're looking at it from the right perspective, you take all of the bad from that, and you grow from it. You use it as rocket fuel when you get out, so that you never have to go through that again. I would say it's one of my biggest sources of gratitude that day that I finally got out, where I finally stepped on the ground outside of the prison gate. It was powerful. To this day, I can still hear the click of the key in the handcuffs releasing me. I could hear the chains being dropped to the floor, and I remember the guy saying, "You're free to go."
Wow.
And that feeling I still use today as rocket fuel to just keep me going. Fast forward, you know, I have a beautiful family, married with 3 children. I started Solar Bear in 2015. Prior to that, I was working for Verizon selling cell phones, and I had a friend that got fired and went and worked for a solar company doing sales. And he'd share everything with me, telling me how much he loved it, about their process. So while I was working, I was in front of a computer all day. So I would just do research. How does solar work? How do I get into the industry? How do you get licensed? How do you get educated? And I figured it all out. So I eventually bought an LLC. I found a qualifier, and then started taking the little steps to start generating business. Built a Facebook page, and then I just went and started knocking doors. I didn't have a website. I didn't have any reviews. I knew that I just wanted to help people, and I felt like solar was the path that I could take to really make a difference. So I sold my first few couple jobs, and I was subbing them out to a local installer. And I realized that in doing that, I was giving away all of the profit, giving away all of the quality control, and really left the customer experience up to the contractor, which had no contact with the customer. So I realized that, hey, I've got to figure out how to do this on my own. So in the next 2 months, I sold 3 really big projects out on the beach, multi-million-dollar waterfront properties. And those jobs bankrolled me enough to where I could go hire a full-time install crew. Even if I didn't have jobs every week, I could just float their payroll until we did, and it started to pick up. And with each new job, we would get more referrals because it was me specifically working with the customer, holding their hand through the process, really taking the time and the care to give them the value that they deserve for the money that they're spending. And from that, I was able to get referrals. So as time went on, I eventually brought on some partnership in January of 2018. I sold 75% of the company, and we're all equal partners today, 25, 25, 25, 25. In 2017, I did about $800,000 in revenue. Then when the partnership took place, 2018, we jumped up to almost $9 million.
Wow.
And then 2019, we did $16 million. 2020, we did $32 million. 2021 we did 54 million, and then last year we did 65 million in revenue.
So 3 partners, huge jumps in revenue. Would you say a lot of people in this industry, in construction in general, they're very skeptical about mentors, very skeptical about partners, even hiring people, bringing help, can't do it alone. You're living proof that you can go to $65 million in revenue in a couple of years with the right help. Give me a little bit more details on what did your partners brought to the table. Was it what kind of knowledge they have? Because my understanding, they also were not from this industry per se, but they have skills that you did not have. How did they help you to achieve what you achieve, and would you be able to do it without them?
Very good question. And the short answer is no. I think that all things that are amazing and great are always done in team. Nothing is ever really done alone. You have an incredible team here. Without them, you wouldn't be producing the incredible content you're creating right now, right? So when I first started Solar Bear, I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to get a second job for a company called SecureNet Technologies. And we sold software for home automation and home security. And I would go and train these guys in Tampa, this company called Safe Home. And what we would do is we would show them how to use the app where they could control their lights, their locks, their thermostat, their garage door, and their security system. While I was there training them, I would be telling them about my solar business on the side. And, you know, they were intrigued, but it wasn't their realm, right? They were home security, home automation. And in June of 2017, I got fired from the software company because they found out I was running my solar business on the side. And a couple months later, I get a call from who is my now partner, John Keith. He's like, "Hey, Blake, how you doing? My aunt in Bradenton, she really needs some solar. Could you give her a call?" I said, "Sure, no problem." And then he started asking me all these questions. And he's like, "Listen, you know, we picked up on your passion and your enthusiasm for what you're doing, and we're looking to sell our business, and we'd like to join you in your venture with solar." So over the next few months, we worked out an operating agreement. And like you said a few moments ago, it is difficult bringing on partners. It's difficult hiring employees, right? Because you have a vision, you want it to go one way, and you hear horror stories about partnerships going bad, about people taking advantage of a younger entrepreneur who've maybe been in business a lot longer. And with their security company, they were in 16 different states. They'd done over $100 million in revenue over 10 years. So they had the skill set to scale, to run operations in multiple territories. And 2 of them had been business partners for 18 years. So that was something that I picked up on, that if they could be in business together for 18 years and have success, you know, nothing is ever smooth. There's always hurdles and bumps and trials and tribulations that you go through. But if you can make it through that and still remain partners, which is, they're fragile. Relationships are fragile. And if I saw that and I was like, wow, you know, maybe these are the guys that I want to be partnered with. And then they brought in one more guy. His name's Mark Tassoni, an incredible mentor to me. He's the oldest of our partners. He's a life coach. He just co-authored the book, The Closer's 5 with Ben Gay, a phenomenal sales guy. And Mark is a great family Christian man like myself. And he just helps the company walk a straight and narrow path. He's we call him the integrator, because he comes in and he tells you direct. And if you're off the system, if you're doing something wrong, he's going to bring you back and show you how to do it right without beating you up, right? So before I signed the operating agreement, I was very distraught. I was about to sell 75% of my company. I was about to give up control. I was literally in tears talking to my wife. You know, is this the right decision?
Wow.
So I prayed on it, I meditated on it, and, you know, everything pointed to go. And we pulled the trigger, and to this day, I am so grateful for all of them, because I have evolved an incredible amount from being around guys who had that experience, who've done it the right way, who've raised their families, who aren't out there partying and, you know, chasing women and doing all the things that you can do when you reach the level of income that these guys were at. And I was very motivated by that. In my younger days, I was a womanizer. I was a crazy party man. I was in nightclubs, so it comes with the environment, right?
Of course.
And, you know, now having a family and wanting to walk that straight and narrow path, these guys were great role models for me. So
I want to take a quick break, and I want you guys to think about it. For those who are skeptical and for those who wants to remain in control, think about what happened here in his story. He's 25% business owner. Would you rather be 100% business owner of whatever you have? Let's say you're around $5 million business. They do 60, which means 25% is about $15 million. So his portion, if you will, he's responsible for $15 million, and he still have three more partners. Together they do 60. So many people want to be fully in control, and they're only able to grow to 3, 4, 5 million, never past 10, never past 15. Many stop there. 15 million is great if you're 100% owner, but think about being 25% of 60, and I feel like they're just getting started. I mean, 5 years in business, 6 years in business, still have ways to go. What do you think? Do you have a goal? How big do you want to guys take it?
you know, with the things that we're building out now, we believe that we can create it to be a billion-dollar company. There are other assets that we're building out on the backside, and we believe that where the industry is going, it's going to call for great contractors that do great work, that don't subcontract, that take care of their people, their employees, and their customers, have a great culture, and don't ever lose sight of that. I think when you're by yourself, you reach a level of complexity that you really can't get past alone. And bringing on partnerships allows you to break through that glass barrier, that level of complexity that you might be hitting when you're by yourself. Not only that, it brings in fresh ideas. It brings in fresh perspectives, right? We all have an ego that we're trying to kill. We all have internal sabotage that we're not even aware of. And when you have other perceptions in it, sometimes it brings the clarity a lot faster, excuse me. I think it's the collective ideas that make us great, not anyone's individual idea, right? And I never just have one idea and it's exactly my idea that goes forward. I'll put my idea on the table, and then we'll all talk about it, and we'll evolve it and make it the absolute best that it can possibly be, overturning every stone. And it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more difficult to do that when you're by yourself.
Would you agree that the biggest limitation to the business size is the character of the owner?
It is an incredible weight on the business. Like, it's probably tipping the scale of being one of the most important things, because speed of the captain, speed of the crew, right? If you're out there doing wrong, if your intention is to just make money and to not serve people at the highest level possible, then you're going to reap what you sow. It's going to come back around. And when you own a business and you have 200 employees like I do, you have an incredible responsibility to take care of them, because it's not just them, it's their spouses, it's their children, it's their direct family that could also be being supported by the level of income that they're creating in your company. And I don't take that lightly. I take it very seriously. To whom much is given, much is required. And being in construction, especially in solar, there is a lot of moving parts. It is relatively a new industry. Like, roofing's been around for tens of thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
Solar really started to take flight in around 2012 when the government put out an actual rebate. It was a government fund of around $21 million, and it went fast. So the government said, wow, okay, we need to keep pushing this. They flipped the tax rebate to a tax credit, which is what you see today. And they've just extended that all the way through 2032, and it's 30%. So if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
Love it. I want to come back a little bit to your jail time and overcome adversity. Give advice to someone who have a bad record, who maybe made a mistake in life and wants to start a business. You're openly talking about your story. You're not trying to hide it, and I respect it. And we have a lot of guys, with the felonies, with the, bad history. Some have done drugs, some have done, jail time for different reasons. And now they want to own a business. Give them advice, like how to tell their story, because some people would not do business with you. And have you lost business because of your felony or your record?
I've always believed that being honest and sharing your story for what it really is going to allow people to see the real you. And because I knew I wasn't a criminal and I wasn't out there trying to do bad and I'd made a mistake, I really wanted to share that because that happens to so many people, especially young men, right? We're full of testosterone when we're that young. You punch somebody and you punch them wrong, and some people end up in prison for the rest of their lives because that person dies from one punch. You can never take that back. So I've always wanted to put it out there that, listen, second chances are real. There are people out there that want to give second chances because they have been given a second chance. And because I was given a second chance, I want to share my story in hopes that other people that have gone through stuff, that have made mistakes in their past, that maybe weren't walking the straight and narrow that they should, or that they didn't have the guidance or the mentors that they needed, right? You can use your mistakes as fuel to go as far as you possibly can, right? You can look back on that forever as you're going through your journey, and it always is a fresh reminder of, why you were there and where you're going. The issue with, more serious crimes like drugs and money crimes like theft, you're going to have a more difficult time getting into an industry that involves money or involves being in somebody's home, right? For me, they consider it a violent crime, but I don't know any young man that hasn't gotten in one fist fight in his life, right? So
what happened to the guy who went to coma? How long he stayed in coma?
just a couple days. It was really a medically induced coma. He had internal bleeding in the top of the brain called a subdural hematoma, and they put him in a medically induced coma so that the brain would stop swelling. And he came out. Everything's fine. He's a successful guy in New York City today.
Wow.
And we actually stay in contact.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he want you to go to jail?
His mom did. He didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
So parents pushed it?
His mother pushed it very hard. His dad was a pretty powerful lobbyist in Tallahassee, so I was going to Florida State University. Wow. And I think that was a part of how I ended up in prison. There was some behind-the-scenes stuff going on. But I remember getting a text message from him and just saying, hey, listen, I don't want to press charges. But the state was following the mom's orders and not the gentleman who got punched.
Wow. How old was he at the time?
Same age as me. We were 19 years old.
So crazy. Yeah. Describe solar industry as an outsider. So 2012, it's kind of started and became Wild West very fast. A lot of bad players, a lot of con artists. Is it still happening?
It is. Like any industry, especially in construction, whether it be roofing or solar or air conditions or general contracting, there are bad apples out there. And it's up to us, being the good contractors in the industry, to deputize and to put it out there, the rights and the wrongs, the do's and the don'ts, what you should look out for when making a change to solar energy, right?
I love that you said, I want to interrupt you right there and stop you because it's so powerful. Like we should police ourselves because we know the guys, when we do call out contractors on Roofing Insights channel, people often say like, oh, what are you, roofing police? And I always say, well, police does not care about this. Government does not care about it. Like if a roofer knows another roofer who's doing something wrong and you don't say anything, you don't call it out, who will? Like you're the solar guy. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I love social media. I love YouTube. When I need advice, I go to YouTube and I find expert like yourself. You're the best person in the world to expose something. There's one channel, guy used to because he lost that job at a Chevy dealership, and he was given advice how to buy a car and not to get scammed and not because dealerships also used to have like all the fees and stuff, and he's like, when your dealer does this, like of course his industry hated him, but he was doing what's right for the consumer. He became super popular. Met him at a YouTube conference. At that time he has like 500,000 subs. Great guy. This is what I'm talking about. If someone from car industry, finance industry will not tell us what was going on there, government, FBI, FTC, all of those agencies, they're so behind. It takes years for them to catch on. But you are, as an expert today, all of you guys who is watching, you can, if you know something, turn on a camera and say, hey, here's what's happening. And I want to talk about it, because exposing the ugly truth eliminates the truth. I always bring an analogy with the light. When you turn on light, dark disappears. Light does not fight with the dark. Light always wins. When you expose the dark side of the business, it has to go away. It's very hard to keep going once you exposed. Like, and people just don't think about it. But one time you expose something, like bad practice, any bad practice, anyone who's still doing it will have to stop because they don't want to be exposed.
Exactly. And this is the perspective that I look at it from. The reason we need to be deputizing the people who are doing it wrong is because if you don't, you're actually hurting yourself, because they're damaging your industry. And it's up to us, who have worked extremely hard, blood, sweat, and tears to get to the point of where we're at, to protect our industry. And solar being somewhat a new industry, it's still fragile. What I see coming down the path is more regulation. Right now, it's monitored by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation in each state. And then depending on each state, their licensing boards, whether it be the electrical or the building side. And they need people like us to put out the information that helps customers see the truth, to see the light, and to eliminate the dark. I wouldn't say there's a ton of scammy solar people out there. The misconception comes from the ads that are driven online. Because it's such an educational piece, it's really hard to educate people on Facebook because they're scrolling so fast, right? And you need a solid 4 to 5 minutes just to explain just the high level points. And the lead providers and the lead companies out there, they would create these really, and I hate them so much, and I always comment on them, like, you guys are killing our industry. You need to take this down. Because it'll show a picture of the governor, it'll show a list of zip codes, and it'll say, hey, if you live in this area, the governor's giving you free solar. Sign up today. And then they take that data and they turn around and they sell it to all the different solar contractors, who then reach out to them to try and book an appointment. Now, when you go out to the house, it's up to you to educate the customer, right? It's up to you to take them through the process. And we have a 15-step selling system that is very defined, and we know when our guys are off the system. We take the customer through what to look out for. We take them through basically a truth test to show them, does the company have general liability and workers' comp? Are they subcontracting any work? How many years have they actually been in business? Are they using U.S. made equipment? Are they backing up their warranties with a third-party warranty? For instance, a lot of these new companies that are in the industry, they'll offer a 25-year workmanship warranty, but they've been in business for 3 years. How can they sit there and say, hey, I'm going to give you a 25-year warranty that I can stand on? The reality is that there is programs out there that you can get a third-party, basically insurance coverage, that if anything ever happens to your business, your customers are still protected. And that's what we've done since day one. We always try to shine the light on the way to do it the right way, because solar is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a long-term, smart money plan. It is an investment. If you look at it from this perspective, let's look at the state of Florida for a moment. It's a regulated state. Based on your address, you're attached to a utility company. Every year for the last 50 years, the rates of those utilities have gone up. The homeowners aren't using more power. They're just charging you more to produce the energy to transfer it to your home. So when the utility companies apply to the Public Service Commission for a $4 billion rate increase, they might not get the $4 billion, but they get $2.5 billion. And this is happening every single year. Over the last 4 years, the cost of power has gone up over 50% in the state of Florida, right?
Last 4 years, over 50%.
Yeah, just last year it went up over 22% throughout the state.
How do they explain it? Like, what drives the prices up?
Cost of fuel, right? When the cost of fuel goes up, there is fuel that is used in electricity generation.
Sure.
When they're building power plants. So in Florida, Duke Energy was building a ton of power plants that never reached completion. And then they're turning around and charging the constituents of Florida for their failed construction project, right? So if the cost of power is going up, that means it has a never-ending payment with never-ending interest. And this is why going solar is a long-term smart money plan. What you're doing is you're taking their existing cost for power and you're significantly reducing it, and you're locking in that rate. So that rate stays the same year over year. So as the utility rates goes up, once you have solar, the only thing that goes up for you is your savings. So that's why when people are doing the math and they're like, oh, solar doesn't make sense. I got to invest $30,000. It's going to take me 50 years to get that back. But the reality is they're not taking into consideration the rising cost of electricity. If you look at California, for instance, it's the highest cost of power in the entire country. And that's why they had such fast solar growth, because people could go solar and tremendously reduce their expenses because the cost of power was so much there. And because the utility companies in California don't like that, they just passed NEM 3.0, which is basically eliminating net metering. Net metering is how customers get credit from the utility company for the solar production that they produce on their roof.
Why they have so much power?
Money.
Like lobbyists?
Well, no, I mean, they if you think about utility companies, they're massively powerful in the sense of their financial stability. Florida Power
It's
and
a
Light.
tax on all people. Everybody has it. Everybody has to pay.
Everyone has a power company, and whether you're in a regulated state like Florida or a deregulated state like Texas, you have to have a utility company. Now, you can go off the grid, you can go live off in the distance and get a bunch of battery packs, but eventually you're either going to need to replace those batteries and get back on the grid, or keep investing into your off-grid power. Technology is growing year over year. The products are getting better and more powerful and more longer lasting. But the reality is it's not a true one-for-one yet. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, hey, yeah, just go all solar and batteries and don't be connected to the grid at all. Because just like other mechanical equipment, sometimes it fails. Like your internet goes out occasionally, right?
Of course.
So if the inverter fails, your system could be down while you're waiting for a new inverter. We use microstring inverters so that when one inverter goes down, the rest of the system is still working. A lot of companies take a cheaper route and they use an inverter like Solar Edge, where if the Solar Edge inverter goes down, the entire system shuts down. So if the entire system shuts down and you're off the grid, what are you doing? You've lost all power and you have no connection. So
what's your take on Solar City and Elon Musk? So Elon Musk, they bought Solar City. Where Solar City is now? Because they were doing like $2 billion, I think, a year. And your take on Tesla roofs in general?
So I will say that Solar City and Vivint Solar pretty much paved the way for the residential solar market that you see today. Solar City at that time had about 3,000 reps across the country. And what Elon Musk did was one day he came in and he said, listen, I don't like this door-to-door stuff. This is not who I am. So he was eliminating that.
So Elon Musk is not a door knocker.
He's not a door knocker. He basically converted the 3,000 reps into retail, and Tesla bought Solar City, brought it in, and then that's what you see in all the Tesla stores now. You see the solar panels on the wall. You see the Tesla Powerwall and the Tesla cars. So now you're buying it from a retail center versus somebody knocking at your door. They did a lot of things right in the sense that they did have a great sales process. They did have great educational videos for their customers. I had friends that worked for Solar City that would share stuff with me, and it was really great. They had really, really awesome stuff. The issue is that when you have that many reps spread across the country and they're not educated as well as they should be, they don't have the certifications that they should have to be educating the consumer on solar, you get a lot of misinformation. You get a lot of half-truths where the customer ends up holding the bag down the road because the sales rep overpromised and underdelivered, right? Vivint, same thing. They're still out there hitting the pavement. They load up on summertime and they hit it really, really hard. They work 3-4 months and then they take the rest of the year off. If you look at their reviews online, right, they're not talked about highly. People don't like that that model because when you're that big, if you don't have the customer service really dialed in the way that you should, you're creating upset people. You're not only upsetting them, but you're hurting them financially. I'll give you an example. You could be walking a neighborhood door knocking, and there's a house that has a big oak tree in the front, covering the front of the roof with shade. An uneducated rep would go knock on that door, get in the house, sell the solar system, but tell the customer nothing about the shade of their tree. Shade is the kryptonite of solar, right? Not cloud coverage, because you still get UV rays from that, but actual shade, obstructions, trees, buildings, anything that's casting a shadow on your panels will prevent it from producing. So if they've invested $30,000 into their solar system, now they get their first bill and it hasn't changed at all because their entire solar system is covered in shade. Now the homeowners realized, well, hey, I'm not getting production because of my tree out front. What do I do now? I call a tree contractor. I get a quote. It's $5,000 to remove the tree. Now I'm $5,000 more into the pot.
And you might like the tree in the first place.
And you might love the tree in the first place. It's giving your home an aesthetic that's beautiful. It's giving shade, so it's helping with the energy consumption of the home a little bit, right? All of those things go into play. Properly explaining how solar billing works, right? People around the country that don't know as much as they should, they just think, oh, I'm going to get solar and every bill of the year is going to be eliminated. That's not how it works. What we do is we collect their last 12 months energy usage. We collect all 12 bills and we input that data into Aurora Solar, which is the top of the line solar software company in the country. They got a $13 billion valuation. Their program is extremely accurate and we've been using it for years. So we input the data. It takes the data, their geographical location, the pitch of the roof, the angle of the home, all of that into consideration, and it tells you what system size they need to produce the same amount of energy that they used in the previous year. Now, this is where people get lost. Even though we're producing the same amount of energy that they used in the previous year, it wasn't like they took their 10,000 kilowatt hours that they used in the previous year and it was equally split between January, February, March, April, all the way through the year. In the summertime, your bills are higher. In the wintertime, your bills are lower. And in the spring, they're kind of mediocre, right? So if we were to attack the highest bill and say, okay, what's the highest bill you have? Let's build you a solar system for that size bill. They would get a much larger system, which would increase their investment. But on the buyback from the utility company, they only buy back dollar for dollar between 1% and 100%. So anything north of 100%, your buyback goes to a wholesale rate, which is going to extend the return on investment significantly. I'll give you an example. Let's say if we looked at their 12 months usage and they needed a 15 kilowatt system, but there are 3 months in the summer where they would need a 20 kilowatt system. If I went with a 20 kilowatt system, they would be significantly overproducing the rest of the year. So that extra $15,000 they spent to get that extra 5 kilowatts is now doubled in years on the return on investment.
Makes sense.
Right? So we try to aim between 1% and 100%. And we train our customers how to track their energy production. We show them what months of the year they're still going to get a power bill, right? That is how it's supposed to be done. There's guys out there that don't have that education that are just saying, yeah, you get this system size, you're never going to have a bill again. And that's where a lot of the misconception and the false truths come from, where the upset customers and the bad experiences come from. It just comes from uneducated, starts with leadership, allowing their sales reps to go out and give this information. Then on the backside of it, not having a proper welcome call and quality controls, deal review to make sure that this homeowner is a good fit for solar. Solar is not one size fits all. It's not one system fits all markets. One of the things you really need to be aware of is your utility company. Do they buy back dollar for dollar? Are you in a co-op? Like there's a few utility companies in Florida that are co-ops that do not buy back solar. So we don't sell in those areas. People don't understand that. They're just out there flagrant, throwing it against the wall, trying to make it stick.
What about battery packs? Do you recommend it? Why wouldn't you install like battery system if they don't buy back, but can you install big battery pack and use it?
So you have
later on.
You have two different kinds of customers, right? You have a customer that's doing it specifically for the savings because they're on a limited budget and they need to produce more income for their family, right? How can I lower my expenses? How can I make more money at work? A battery is a luxury item, right? It's not required for solar to work. They are still pretty expensive. You know, you're talking 14, 15 grand for one battery, and you generally need two to back up the entire house where you're having the AC covered, the lights.
For how long?
If the grid were to go down, 5 to 6 days.
Wow.
right? It
On
doesn't
2 batteries.
on 2 batteries. Now, if you wanted to, extend the length of time that you could be without the grid, obviously you would need more batteries. But that significantly increases your investment.
But do you really need it? Because how does it work? So let's say you get 2 batteries. Your solar still producing energy, still producing electricity, recharging them essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Now, generally, like in Florida, after we have a hurricane, generally the next few days are absolute pristine weather, right? It's beautiful. The ground and the streets are destroyed, but the sky is beautiful. The hurricane sucks all of that out with them. So yes, they can produce power while they're off charging into the home. You have to have specific setup to do that. Not all solar systems will allow the batteries to charge when the grid is out.
I see.
And the reason for that is because you have a AC and DC inverter. It's grid tied, meaning that it requires power to the inverter to convert the energy from DC to AC, right?
see.
So if the grid goes down and you don't have it hooked up correctly, you'll still have the battery storage, but you're not going to be pulling new energy into the batteries.
I see. Makes sense. You can tell I'm not an electrician. What other businesses do you have, and how did you get into them?
So I have Foam Bear, which is my spray foam insulation
How
company.
big is that operation?
We did 4 million last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's growing. We just started developing the outside sales team. So we advertise on TV, we advertise on the radio, we do Google ads, we do OTT, which is like your they call it over the top. Yeah, Hulu, Amazon, your streaming services, and Facebook ads. So we've got leads coming in from all directions, and from that solar lead, we'll pitch them on foam. And if they are in need of a new roof, we'll pitch them on a new roof. And my third company is Roof Bear. So we have Solar Bear, Roof Bear, and Foam Bear.
What's the hardest one?
Solar, by
Solar is
far.
the hardest?
Yeah, by far. The moving parts, the building departments, working with the utility companies after they've passed inspection. In Florida, because we have different wind zones because of hurricanes, as you get more south in the state, the requirements become more intense. The inspections go from 1 inspection to 5 inspections for one project. So solar is a moving beast. It is very, very difficult, and I'm very grateful for our team, because without them, we wouldn't be here today. Spray foam is by far the easiest. It is a high barrier of entry to get in the business because the machinery is expensive, but it doesn't require a permit. It doesn't require an inspection. There are codes that you have to follow, like the DC 315, which is a fire retardant we spray on the foam after we install it. So how it all works is we'll get a solar customer, and let's say they've got a really inefficient home, right? Their $400 bill and their house is 1,300 square feet. We can't fit enough solar to eliminate the bill on that house because it's not big enough, right? But the spray foam, if you go to energy.gov, the U.S. energy website, they quote up to 50% of consumption can be reduced by spray foam. With all of our customers, we guarantee 25%. So we'll reduce the solar system by 25%, fill that gap in with spray foam, still giving them the 100% offset on their utility usage, but fitting it on the roof, right? Making their home more comfortable. What we like to do is we like to reduce, and then we like to produce. If you're just putting a solar system on a very inefficient home, it's almost like you're putting a Band-Aid on a black hole, right? The home's inefficient. We need to fix the problems first, because the reality is you don't need this size solar system. You need to fix the losses in the home before you go solar. And then obviously that same lead, we're doing a roof inspection, making sure that they don't have any damage, making sure that it's in good standing, that's not more than 10 years old. If it is, we have a trademark process called a solar-ready roofing system. So what we do is when we tear the roof off, we put our underlayment down, and then we put our foot attachments down, whether it be going to be an asphalt shingle roof or a tile roof. We'll put the feet down first, and then we flash the roof material around the feet so that there's no possible chance of leaks. Whereas a lot of these other guys who don't have a roofing license are going out there and they're just drilling holes into the top of the roof. They're not properly sealing it.
How common is that for a solar company to ruin good roofing system?
It is common because I just took over 500 projects from one of the largest banks called GoodLeap. There was a company called Modern Concept Solar They had a few thousand customers. They were doing shady business. They're getting sued by the attorney general. And
What's the name of the company?
Modern Concepts Solar.
Okay, they're out of business now?
They're running for the hills right now. Nobody can find them. Oh. But they left 1,200 customers in Florida, total of $45 million worth of projects,
wow,
unfinished. So we got contracted by the bank to go and get all of these people to the finish line. So we took over.
Because they were financed.
Correct. Yeah. So between us and 2 other contractors, we took on all those projects. And out of the 500, we've already gotten 400 to what's called PTO. That's when the utility company changes out your meter so that they can start measuring your production. And the customers are ecstatic. They are so grateful and so happy because they thought they were going to have this massive investment that was now a paperweight on their roof, right? So that's what I meant by deputizing. You've really got to step in and step up. You can't just allow bad to happen because you're not involved in it, right? You've really got to be vocal.
We'll all look bad.
We'll all look bad. Tell me if a homeowner heard about that and didn't hear anything else. What are they going to think about the industry? I'm not doing solar.
Of course.
It's terrifying. I don't want to get involved in that. But the reality is that solar done right is an incredible investment because what it is you're going up against the 800-pound gorilla, the monopoly power companies. They are going to continue raising the rates. Florida Power and Light, which is the largest utility company in Florida, they're owned by the largest utility in the country called Nextera Energy Inc. Last year, they put forward an anti-net metering bill that ended up going through the Florida House and the Florida Senate. We testified at all the meetings. We lobbied. We did everything we could, but it still passed because they had paid somebody off, right? They had put money, $20 million in the pockets of these representatives.
How do you know it was $20 million?
Just from back channel information. I think it was close to $21 million that they invested into this bill to get it going. And where that money went, I'm not sure. I don't know if it went to the actual bill itself or if it was to pay people off. But at the end of the day, Ron DeSantis came in and vetoed the bill because he's like, listen, we're up against the highest inflation that we've experienced in 40 years. The last thing I'm going to do is allow a monopoly power company to start increase costs for our constituents, right? I'm not going to allow that to happen. So he shut it down.
Wow.
But
that's powerful.
They're going to come back again. It's not over, right?
I mean, 21 million for them, it's pennies.
It's pennies.
I mean, they can raise it just like that if they can get a couple $1 billion every year increase.
The reality is that with every new customer that goes solar, they're losing profit, they're losing revenue. So based on the metrics and the growth that they're seeing, we just had a record year. Again, for 2022 was a record year. It grew 40% year over year from the year before. So they can see their tombstone down the path, right? They can look down based on
just like insurance companies and restoration companies go head to head. The biggest buyer of roofs in the United States is insurance companies, and every profitable and big roofing company essentially is a threat to insurance company.
Yep.
Same. So your enemy is not insurance companies, but power companies.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there is an absolute need for them. But I believe that as Americans, we have the freedom to choose. And we shouldn't be locked into something that we have no control over just because we own a home plotted on this address. And solar gives you a path out of that. It allows you to lock in that fixed rate. And one thing I didn't touch on is, I talked about the investment side. Our average ticket is around 50 grand. That's solar, foam, and roof together. We don't ask for money from the customers. We finance the projects through solar lenders and home improvement lenders that have incredible products. They're 25 years long. They're really, really low interest rate, 2.99%, and they're fixed. They don't go up. They don't change. They don't place a lien on your home.
100% of your jobs are financed?
No, I would say about 95. There are customers that, I won't finance anything. I have perfect credit. I want to pay cash, and we allow that to happen. But the majority, the vast majority are financed. And what's great about it is they sign up. They don't have to make their first payment until 90 days after the system's been installed and turned on. So they get to see
That's a good deal.
Yeah. We have another program that's 18 months until their first payment. So it's a 25-year, 6.99%, where the first 18 months are no interest and no payments. So what we do with the customers, we tell them to, during that first 18 months, take the savings that you're getting from the solar and set it aside. So let's just say you're saving $150 a month. Now you've got a couple grand set
But the
aside.
interest.
Not even for the interest, for when your payments start, right? So 18 months goes by, you've been saving $150 a month. Now you're pulling from the pool of your savings for the next, 12 months. And you do the same thing during that 12 months. Take your savings that you're getting by not having to spend your own money and put it back into that pile. So we teach them how to pay their loan down fast and how to be free of both the finance payment and the cost of power. Every month that they get savings is a green return on their investment, right? When you finance the system, because a power bill is never-ending interest with a never-ending payment because it never goes away, you are really protecting yourself from the rising cost of electricity. You're blocking that out, and you're saying that, hey, listen, I want to be connected to your grid. I'll pay your small customer charge, like with Duke Energy, it's $30 a month. TECO, which is Tampa Electric, that's $15 a month. Florida Power and Light, it's $15 a month. I'll pay your customer charge, but I'm going to have solar. I'm not going to pay these increases that you guys keep getting every year. Florida Power and Light just got approved for a 65% rate increase by 2025. So it's not all going to happen at once, but it's going to be a scale up to the cost of power down there.
65 is a lot.
It is a lot. Florida is a retiree state, right?
Yes.
People on Social Security, disability. How are they going to be able to afford the cost of power if this trend does not stop, if it does not pivot and go the other direction?
Describe to me your business model versus typical solar company business model. I know there's a lot of middlemen. I know there's financing. I don't know. There's so many companies abuse financing because homeowner does not know who's getting paid, and now you have sales reps who's making 5-10 grand per sale.
Right.
And I'm not against profit. You can make all your money, but when you're in a middleman, when you don't do actual work, when you just sign a paper, and then what does homeowner get? Like, that's my problem with the industry.
Yeah, and me too. So the way that we differ is all of my sales reps, all of my installers, we have a little over 200 employees, they're all W-2. Everybody works directly for the company. We don't
How expensive is that in Florida?
It is expensive. Payroll tax is expensive. Thank God for ERC, but payroll tax is very expensive. You're talking 12, 13% of your total payroll. My payroll is anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 a week.
Sure.
Yeah. So all of our people are W-2. We also do not take outside sales orgs deals. And the reason for that is
explain that,
that
for those who don't know what sales orgs in solar industry.
So the vast majority of the industry right now, if you go out into the U.S., not just Florida, you have two types of solar companies. You have sales organizations, which have just sales reps, and they have a company name and they have a process, but they're not licensed. They don't control the install.
They don't do the work.
They don't do the work. After they sell you, they're gone and off to the next customer. On the other side of it, you have the solar companies that just do the installations. They don't sell solar. They only go after these sales orgs to bring them deals.
They're called
EPCs.
EPCs.
Correct. And these EPCs, they all get a very bad rap because they're taking deals from all these different companies that have all these different standard operating procedures.
How many EPCs are out there?
Probably 500 to 1,000, I would say, nowadays.
So EPC is pretty much subcontractor who install actual system. Where do they buy products and materials? Systems.
They might sell a little bit, but the majority of them, they're recruiting sales organizations to sell for them, right? So at the house, the contract that you're signing when you have a sales organ and an EPC is the actual contract of the EPC. It's because they hold the license, they're responsible and they're in control, and that's who the contract has to be written under.
Pretty much sales org works for EPC. EPC is the boss here.
EPC gets funded, EPC pays out the sales orgs, correct, right? Because they have the license, they have the connection with the banks. So when they get funded for their projects, they then turn and pay these guys out. So the problem...
What I've seen, and sorry to interrupt, but what I've seen, quite a few companies, these EPCs, go out of business and nobody's taking any liability. Sales organizations don't pay bills. They often don't pay roofers, don't pay for their projects. EPCs go out of business. It's a big mess. My follow-up question on EPC is like, what actually the product? So if company is just to sell products, how many products are out there?
Well, so you've got the modules, which are the panels, right? You have
Who produces them? Like, what's the most common? Where are they coming from?
well, you have U.S. manufacturers and you have overseas manufacturers. Back in the day, it was Panasonic, LG, Sharp, the big electrical
Yeah, yep,
companies,
yep.
and then you've got companies like QCell, Trina, Canadian Solar.
Do those brands matter, or do people even know it? Are they all similar, the same? Like in Shingle World, we have 7, 8 brands, and they're similar. Some of them better than others. But what about that? Like, what's the differentiator for panels?
The differentiator is the product warranties, right? So a cheaper panel is going to be warranted for 10 years with a 25-year production guarantee. And what they call the tier 1 panels, they're going to be warranted for 25 years, the panel itself, and they're going to have a 30-year production guarantee. Now, different panels have different levels of efficiency. The more expensive the panel, generally the higher the efficiency on the panel. Companies like Solaria and SunPower, REC, these are very good panels. Mission Solar, which is out of Texas, they're a U.S. manufacturer. Silfab's an a North American manufacturer. They have facilities in Toronto and in Washington State. That's who we use. I wouldn't say they're all the same because you have to look at the financial stability of that company, right? If they're offering, again, these very long warranties, can they back it up, right? Can they back it up with their track record? Can they back it up with their financial stability and all that? So generally the EPC tells the sales org what equipment they're offering, and then the sales org offers that to the customer. The sales org is never going and saying, hey, we want to offer these panels. It's coming from the EPC. They're controlling the flow of what they call bill of materials and the balance of system.
Got it. So back to sales organizations. What happens when EPC does not pay them? Because I've seen those cases where sales orgs usually hires the roofers. They sell the job, they subcontract everything, but they have to get paid by EPC. And if anything happens to EPC, and it happens pretty often, they go out of business and no one gets paid.
Yeah, so it comes back to the EPC's operating procedures, right? The sales rep will go online and say, I did all this work and didn't get paid by the contractor. But if you dig deeper, the likelihood of finding that they screwed up something in the process that got them charged back and that's why they didn't get paid, the likelihood of that is very high. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't EPCs out there that don't pay their bills, because there absolutely are. But we need to deputize those guys and get them out of here, because it makes a mess for everyone down the line, roofers included, right? If the sales org's hiring the roofer as a subcontractor and the sales org doesn't get paid, they don't have the funds to pay the roofer, right? So they're telling the roofer, hey, I'm working on it. And it ends up hurting everybody. The sales orgs, they need more quality control. In the state of Florida, you don't have a bunch of sales orgs like you do in the rest of the country. And the reason for that is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation requires anybody who is selling solar in Florida to have a license or to have a qualifier, right? Now, there are guys out there that are doing it the wrong way, but the DBPR is they're investigating constantly. So you have to be licensed. You also, if you have a license, you can't have 1099 sales rep employees, because in Florida they consider a 1099 a subcontractor, and you can't be a subcontractor if you don't hold a license. And that's why all of my employees are W-2.
Got it. Is it easier to start in solar business now or 5 years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, call it the solar gold rush, right? The first guys to the dance are generally the guys that have grown and done well if they have integrity. But now there are just so many people that are just trying to come into the industry because they see other people making money, right? And their intention is not to serve. Their intention is not to help. Their intention is to come in and get rich and get out. And we see that a lot. And I'm sure you see it in roofing too, where guys just come in, they make a mess, and then they're gone.
What do you have to do today? Like, if you would if you want to start brand new solar company in Florida, for example, which is highly regulated versus Texas, where's easier? How much money do you have to have in Texas or Florida? Maybe different numbers for different states. What's required? What do you have to go through?
So back in the day, when you sold a project, the bank would pre-fund you 50% of the project. So you didn't have to use your own cash to purchase the materials, to pay the commissions, to do any of the things that are considered overhead. You had funding right away. Today, there is no upfront funding for the majority of the companies out there.
So they stopped doing that?
They stopped doing that because there were things that happened where a company went out of business and the bank lost, tens of millions of dollars overnight. And they all noticed and said, hey, we can no longer let this happen. So if you're trying to get into the solar industry today, the barrier of entry is a lot higher. You need at least $1 million in the bank.
$1 million.
Right. I mean, if you're going to be a small mom and pop and you're just going to sell a couple jobs a week, then not necessarily. But if you're trying to be a real company that does its own installations, that has its own trucks, all of the vehicles are wrapped, you own your own building, these are the things that are really required to have success. You've got to have money in the bank because things can go wrong.
Of course.
We had we have a program in Florida called PACE. It stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And basically what happens is it does not matter what the homeowner's credit score is, as long as they own their home and they paid their property taxes on time, they can get approved for 20% of the just value of the home for home improvements. It can be solar, it can be a new roof, windows, doors, AC, insulation, you name it. And it's really cool because let's say it's a $300,000 house. Now they've got 60 grand. They get spread out on a 30-year term at a low interest rate for home improvements. Well, we were doing business with a PACE provider. We had a bunch of installs done, and we get an email one day that says, hey, we can't fund any of these projects. We don't have any more money. So you floated the projects, you paid the commissions, you did the work, you paid the labor, you did everything, you passed inspection, and now they're not able to fund you. So if you don't have money in the bank and something like that happens, your entire operation can go upside down overnight. And that's not the first time this has happened. I was with another bank in 2016 that did the same thing. They were offering an 18-month no interest, no payment, followed by a 5.49 variable interest rate. And it was a great product. But then one day we got an email that says, hey, we can't fund these projects. And we had to pivot and go get all of those customers reapproved through another lender so that we can get the project paid for. So you just have to be prepared, saving for the rainy day. In construction, it's like an onion, right? You take off a layer and you don't know what the next layer is going to be. And the same for roofing. And you see that all the time. Your roof looks great from the outside. You take off the first layer and now you've got 40 pieces of rotted plywood that you didn't put into the contract for the customer, right?
But it's also fair to the business. If you're brand new, you don't know what's coming, and business hits you differently every day. Like like equipment breaks in a way you've never thought before. Like the stuff happens that, in my last year before I sold my roofing business, we have this metal job. My manager showed panels to the homeowner, and they agreed on it, and they put it in contract. And then my metal guy came in, and he sold my manager essentially, or forced him, wherever his leverage he had at the time. He said, I want to use my own panels because it was better for him. The problem was the design was a little bit different. And funny enough, the owner of the house actually was in solar business. So he wanted to install solar on his metal roof after the fact. So we're done with the project. Color was a little bit off, not much. But we could not find brackets for the new panel. They were slightly off, but enough not to be able, if we would go with the original, we wouldn't have a problem. So now you have a metal guy who literally say, I'll just do my panels. They're pretty much almost the same, but that almost cost me 70 grand. And I mean, put that in a business book. Who is liable for that? You as a business owner have to take shit from every direction. Can you fire your sales manager? Can you hire your metal guy? No, you guys all have to go in, learn from that story so it never happens again, or listen to the podcast and learn on other people's mistakes. But it is like an onion. Every single day. What are your challenges today? What's the biggest problems that you have fixing in your business right now?
I can say that over the last, we're on our 8th year in business. We've made all the mistakes, at least that I can think of at this point, right? I'm sure something will come down the road. Until the next one. We've paid the dummy tax. And every time we made a mistake, we always make it a win-win for the customer, because I believe that our reputation is our most important asset, because we're not in this to get rich and to be gone. We're in this for longevity. Like I said, we've got 200 employees. A lot of guys have climbed the ladder, and they're doing extremely well for their families. And without the reputation, you can be gone in an instant. And I was mentioning that company Solar Edge before. One of the biggest challenges that we faced as a company was our first 1,200 projects were through Solar Edge. And what happened was they had a manufacturing issue where there was a microfracture in the COM board of the inverter. So they'd work it first, we'd install them, and then in the Florida heat, hot during the day, cooling down at night, that causes material to contract and expand the same way it does on the roof. Well, the inverters all failed. I mean, we literally changed out over 1,000 inverters from Solar Edge, where I had to pay for the truck roll. I had to wait for a new inverter to come in. Sometimes it was 90 days. So during that time, I'm paying for the customer's power bill because they're without an inverter. And we didn't really know what was going on at this time. So when that all took place, we left Solar Edge and we went to Enphase. And Enphase has been phenomenal. Their inverters do not fail. I mean, we've installed over 7,000 systems in the state of Florida, and I rarely have to roll a truck back to those customers. So equipment failure is a big part of it, and a big reason as to why you can't be bleeding the business of its profits. You've got to have safety nets in place because things like that can happen. As technology grows and new products come out, there's always that chance that new product could have an issue. Generac came out with their solar option, which is called Power Cell. Their first rollout.
Batteries, right?
Yeah, well, batteries and inverters. And their first rollout, complete failure. Complete failure. Yeah. Luckily, they're a great company in the sense that, hey, they recognize the issue and they've taken care of not only the homeowner, but the contractors as well. I know that because I have some good friends in the industry that jumped onto that and experienced that pain. Solar Edge was not a good company. They're still not, in the sense that they have class action lawsuits going on. They're supposed to pay you $250 every time you have to replace an inverter to roll a truck. We haven't seen a penny, and we've replaced replaced about 1,000 of them and haven't seen a penny. So it's really important to know what type of equipment is going on your home, but we can get into that a little bit later.
We were in California, and we're looking at one of the solar jobs, and the roofing contractor, was giving me a story how homeowner had a lot of leaks because solar company came in, drill holes, ruined the roof. It was the rental units, 4 of them. All 4 of them had leaks. So now you have tenants, they're leaking. But the challenge on that job was that homeowner did not own the system. They were on the leasing part. Is that a common thing? Is it going away? Is it getting popular? What's your take on leasing solar? Would you recommend it to the homeowner?
In certain scenarios, it makes sense.
Do you guys do that?
We do, but on a very limited basis. It generally works out best for customers who do not qualify for the federal tax credit. So I had mentioned earlier that Florida is a senior citizen state, a retiree state. People come there to spend the rest of their life. My father calls it the stairway to heaven. But a lot of those people have limited income, so they don't pay taxes. And a tax credit is exactly that. It's a credit against what you've paid into taxes. So if you haven't paid taxes, you don't get a tax credit. That's a big chunk of the cost of the system that you're generally getting back. So the leasing takes that issue out of the equation and allows them to get the panels. They don't have to own it. They don't have to worry about making a bubble payment on their financing when they get the tax credit, and they just get the savings. The issues come about with the leasing when there are an issue down the road, right? When you have a leak or a contractor that is not following installation manufacturer specifications. There is literally an exact protocol on how to install every foot, right? Whether it's from Sunmoto or Iron Ridge, there is a process to properly flash and seal every foot. And guys cut corners, right? Instead of using the proper M1 solution for the sealant, they're going and using an off-brand name that doesn't have the substance inside it that's going to allow it to last on a Florida roof for a long time. So it works a couple years, and then there's cracks and crevices in it. Now you're getting a leak into the roof. So super important. But leasing is put out there by some big banks. Sonova is one of them. Sunrun, which is the largest solar installer in the country, they also offer leasing of their own product. Florida did not even allow leasing up until like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. They just started allowing it. It's called a power purchase agreement. Because Florida is a regulated state, they don't allow somebody else to sell power, right? So when you have a lease, it's almost like the person that is leasing you the panels is selling you that energy because you're paying them, right?
I see.
So,
Got it. Let's talk about financing a little bit more. How many options do homeowner have? How easy or hard it is to finance a solar, and why everybody's financing it? And talk to me about hidden fees that some solar sales guys are using, because I've seen it and I don't think it's legal, but people get away with it when they don't disclose how much they getting paid. And is it illegal to pay a sales commission essentially to hide it in a finance cost? How does it work in the back end and legality of a financing?
for sure. So great question. The reason that financing is so viable is because generally when people don't have a lot of money, they still always pay their power bill, right?
Of course.
So the banks nationwide have an extremely low default rate, meaning a customer fails to pay their solar loan bill. It's less than 2% across the country. It's very, very low. So for the investors providing the banks with the money on the other side, it's a very safe investment for them because they know when that paper gets sold and then gets turned around and sold into the secondary market, the customer is going to pay their bill. They also don't require you to have a crazy credit profile. Like Sunlight Financial will buy down to a 600 credit score. They allow co-borrowers. They allow household income, so combined income, to get approved. And they've made the barrier of entry to get finance relatively low. So it's not just for somebody who's wealthy and has great credit. It is really for anybody who owns a home who is at least somewhat financially responsible with their bills, right? They don't look at DTI, debt to income ratio. They don't look at if you've had a bankruptcy within 2 years. I think if it's 2 years or older, they don't even look at it, right? So they allow the average Joe to get financing where that customer generally can't get finance for anything anywhere else, right? On the fee side, so the banks charge the contractors a fee. That has to be disclosed in our contract. We got to show them what the bank fees. It's a financing fee, right? So if you want to go forward with the absolute best product, the longest term with the lowest interest rate, it's going to have the highest fee. Now, depending on the banks that you're using and the contractor that you're doing business with, they might not be so forthright in sharing that information. But because we've done hundreds of millions of dollars in business, we have a responsibility, almost a fiduciary responsibility with the banks to do what's right because it's right. Not only are we lending out millions of dollars in business every month, but we're also getting audited every quarter by the bank. So the bank audits all of our projects. They all get reviewed to make sure that we're following banking laws and regulations. Are there some bad apples out there? Absolutely. But when you look at the grand scheme of it, even if there's call it a 25% to a 35% fee, if you can make it to where their payment is less than their current cost of power,
sure,
it's a no-brainer for the customer because they're already going to pay that money anyway, right? They're already going to give that money to the power company. So instead of renting the power from the utility company, you now become an owner, right? It's that owner versus renting mentality. Now I own the solar on my roof. I'm protected against the rising cost of electricity, And as long as I don't increase my energy usage by, like, maybe my son moved home from college and him and his girlfriend moved in and now they're using all my bath water, whatever, right? That's the only time that they would start to see a bill again. So the financing, when properly explained, is an absolute blessing because most people don't have 30 to 50 grand just laying around to go for with solar. If the solar lending options were not available like they have been over the last 7 or 8 years, solar would not be where it is today, not even close. And nationwide, we're only about a 3% penetration on residential rooftop solar. We got a long ways to go, a long, long ways to go.
And it's one of the fastest growing industries in general. Like,
Yeah.
I think it makes to the top. What about government regulations? Is it getting harder? Is government stepping in, trying to regulate more, come up with more rules?
Well, actually, in the Inflation Reduction Act, and there's some stuff that's not involved in energy efficiency or that realm in that bill, which I don't like. But the good parts about that bill are they've extended the tax credit 30% to 2032. There are other incentives for weatherizing your home, whether it be insulation or a new AC unit or a new roof, that you can get additional funds in the form of a rebate from the federal government. So right now, they're really pushing it hard so that it continues to grow. Right now, solar production, and this includes residential and what we call utility scale solar, those are the big solar fields you see, they're producing more power than fossil fuel and coal is now. So it's now overtaken what was once the only way, 100-year-old business model of producing power. Hydro generation, thermal generation, and fossil fuel and coal generation. That's what it was. Now you have wind, you have solar, and you have water, all creating energy much more efficiently, much more less expensive.
Love it. Who does not need solar? Like, give advice to the homeowner. Describe perfect non-customer. Like, if you have this, this, and this, do not even entertain solar sales rep.
If you're planning on moving in a year or two, wait till you get into the home that you feel you're going to be there for a while. It's a long-term investment. Now, there are data points out there like NREL.gov. That's NREL.gov. That's the National Renewable Energies Laboratory. It's a government website. They're saying that homes with solar, when they sell, are fetching a 17% higher asking price and selling 20% faster. And I believe what contributes to that is that you have a new generation of people that are buying homes. They're more aware of the green. They're more aware of the
Energy
minimalism,
efficient,
the
yeah.
health, right? We're very
They want to stay off the grid.
yeah. They have a lot more information than, like we were talking about last night, our parents had, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that at their fingertips. So somebody who's about to move, I would wait until you get into your home. Not to say that you couldn't recoup your investment, but it would just be a headache, right? You're not going to make a bunch of money off the sale of your solar. You might break even. You might make a couple $1,000. But the reality is it's a long-term investment. If your home is covered in trees, we're trying, and not everybody believes in this, right? There's the green benefit of solar, right? You're reducing your carbon footprint, which at the end of the day is equivalent to, like, one solar system can be equivalent to planting 11 football fields full of trees. So I almost look at it as like counterproductive to come in and chop down all these trees just so I can put solar on your home. Now, I'm not going to tell you you're not allowed to do that with your trees if that's what you want to do, but it's going to be expensive. Tree removal is very, very expensive.
Sure.
So you're going to have a big investment in removing those trees. If your roof is at the end of its life, do not let somebody convince you to just get the solar on top of it. Oh, it's fine. It'll be good.
Does it happen a lot?
I'm sure. I can't control what goes on in all these other companies. And us, if it's 8 years or older, it's getting a roof audit, right? We do a site survey with every project, even if the roof's 1 year old, right? We get up on the roof, we walk around, we take measurements because we're making sure the solar is going to fit in the design that we have laid out.
I did not think about this before, but would you say that having solar helps life expectancy of the roof in Florida because you have all the sun, or does it go against it? Does it get hotter under the panel because it's a black panel on top of the shingle roof, or does it protect it from the sun and heat?
A little bit of both. And I do believe that if you have the majority of your roof covered with solar, you're absolutely going to extend the life of the materials that are on that roof.
Really?
And here's why.
Because it's in the shade?
In the summertime, when it's close to 100 degrees outside, every afternoon we're getting thunderstorms, showers. So what happens? 100-degree temperature now drops to 70 degrees. When you have that drastic change in temperature over and over and over again, the compound of the material expands and contracts over and over and over and over
Wears
again.
it out.
It wears it out. And that's why roofs in Florida only last 10 to 15 years, where elsewhere they might last 25 years, right? So you're blocking the sunlight. You're blocking the direct impact of raindrops. If you have hail, you're blocking the direct impact of hail. That doesn't mean that other areas might get hit.
Sure. What about hail? How does hail affect panels? Are they class 4 or will they break?
Great question. So the panels are built to withstand the elements, right? In their testing videos for Silfab, they literally put on 4 solar panels and they have girls with high heels walk on them and jump up and down, and you can see the panel flexing. They drive a Mini Cooper over it, and then they drive a Dodge Ram over it. They also take a potato gun. Do you know what a potato gun is? And they load it with hail or a big ice cube, and they blast it. They blast it at 200 miles an hour, and it doesn't break the solar panel. Now, that's not to say you could choose a lesser manufacturer which doesn't have the testing that we're rolling out with Silfab, but they're built to withstand the elements. Not only the sunlight and the rain and the hail, but also high winds, hurricanes. They're built to withstand 150 miles an hour of uplift, right? So Category 5 hits, as long as your installer did it the right way, your roof is going to be a lot more safe than your neighbor's roof. I sent you last night that Warriors of Light video that we did. We had 400 customers in the Fort Myers area, which just got hit by Hurricane Ian. It's the most financially devastating hurricane Florida has ever had. It's just incredible amount of damage. And when we went down there, I mean, literal homes were just piled in the middle of the street. But our customers who had spray foam and had solar were literally the only house in the entire neighborhood that did not lose their roof.
Wow.
Shortly thereafter that, we got contacted by Ron DeSantis' energy team, and we went up to Tallahassee to meet with them because they're now pushing spray foam to be a requirement in coastal cities, because what happens when a hurricane comes in or a tornado where it sucks the roof off, it comes up through the soffit and into the attic, and it creates almost like a vacuum effect inside. When you spray foam, you're sealing off the soffit all the way around. There is no way for that air to get inside. So those homeowners, like you saw in the video, the lady that was in tears, her home was saved, right? Her home was saved because she had solar and because she had spray foam. So long story short, yes, solar can absolutely extend the life of your roof. Doesn't mean that it's a guarantee, right? If you're using shoddy roof materials like the nail line and the was that I won't say the name, but that was pretty funny. You know, you're testing material out there, and if they say it's that, but it's not really that, then you could be up against some other challenges.
You have to make them accountable.
Right. Absolutely.
So we have to make manufacturers accountable. And that's another problem in construction industry, that manufacturers make all these claims, equip salespeople to promise them, but then when product fails, we cannot talk about it. They become very aggressive for exposing them for their own failures. And we're in this together. Like, I don't want to sell the product that does not perform as advertised because it makes me look bad, makes you look bad. And what incentive do you have to change your product for the better if nobody can talk about it? Imagine driving cars where, your seatbelt doesn't work and you cannot file a complaint with the dealer. It's like, oh, it happens all the time. No, you're going to have Toyota CEO in front of the Congress recalling 3,000 cars until we fix the issue. In our industry, there's no recalls, there's no comebacks, we have class actions, but it's years into making, and people already lose millions, if not billions of dollars by that time.
Yeah, wouldn't it serve them better to just come forward and say, hey, thank you for pointing this out. We're going to take the appropriate measurements to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore at our manufacturing facility, right?
The greater question is, what's the driver here? I think it's money. I love United States, and I'll share you this story. When we started here in 2005, I had a friend, Emil, and we lived. So it's three of us, rent an apartment in Chicago, and I remember Emil have this rent. He's like, everything is taken. He was depressed. We found jobs. My first job was $6 an hour in the deli, and he was working with me. And he went on big rant how every niche is taken. Chicago is very busy city, so you have big Polish community, like 2.5 million Polish people, like immigrants from all over the world, like New York, Chicago. As a matter of fact, if you go through airports, busy airports have meaner people because when you have this traffic, it just does something to you. Like no one cares. Like you go to New York, right? And in Chicago had that vibe. That's why I don't like the city much. But he told me this. He said, Dmitry, all niches are taken. United States is a great country, but it's hard to find yourself here and find it. And I get the feeling, but I feel like 15 years later, I can come up with a new business idea every single day. Opportunities are endless. Niches are not taken. I mean, in construction alone, when I meet people like yourself every single day, you can create business over nothing because it's easy. But the challenge is you still have to be accountable for what you do. And we have finance products. We have a lot of manufacturers who make quick bucks, who because it's easy. In the United States, Alex Hermosi just did this podcast. I forgot the host, and he said it's crazy easy to start a business. It's easy. You just have to be consistent and do something every day. It's not hard like people say it is. You just have to work. But the challenge is you start almost any business, any ideas. You can create app. You can create a product. You can, like in solar business, create, right? And then when you start having problems, it goes against your profit. So let's say you make first $1,000,000 and it's good for you. Like you're loaded with the money. And now you have someone who's talking negatively about you because they have problem with it. Instead of fixing it, making it right, you're protecting that $1,000,000 you just made and you go after it.
Right.
Instead of paying maybe $200,000 to fix the problem, you're dealing with a constructive criticism. And that's what they all do. That's what I see finance company like Green Sky. I was sharing a story yesterday. Instead of fixing their problem, so we talked about them on the podcast and we say, hey, you have to be 2 years in business to offer Green Sky. It's bullshit. Like make it available to other groups, right? So they send me cease and desist saying, oh, it's a lie. We offer it's 1 year. Like, no, go fix your product first and then come after me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But I'm not wrong. I mean, think about like why billion-dollar finance company sending cease and desist letter to YouTuber for talking that their product is not perfect. You should be creating new finance products, making it better. Like you should send me a thank you letter for opening your eyes and saying, hey, here's what roofers want.
Right.
Anyway, it's sad. Like the whole industry is sad how bigger players, and it goes on all levels. I mean, energy companies, they're bullying solar companies because they can.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And, that's kind of the capitalistic market that is the U.S., right? Not everybody wants to walk that straight and narrow path. Last night we were talking about the guys that portray themselves to be that way, but behind closed doors, they're completely different. You're always going to be up against that, right? So I think the best thing that we can do is to form a group of or a network of contractors in all different industries that are deputizing and doing what's right and putting the negative and the do not do's on the table for everybody to see. Because if we continue to do that, eventually the consumer becomes educated enough to not be, bamboozled by, smooth sales tactics and misdirection, which ends up just hurting them in the long run.
I agree. Last question for today is, do you agree that nice guys don't last long or finish first, wherever the saying is, that if you're a nice guy, you cannot be successful because you're a nice guy and you're doing a lot of right things. And there's a lot of successful people who are aggressive, who are pushy, who are not nice, but they're successful. Do you agree that nice guys?
I believe that nice guys can finish first. I don't believe that nice guys have to finish last. Because I believe that you can still be a nice guy, but also be extremely dangerous, right? Like Jordan Peterson says, you know, you want to walk a straight and narrow path. You want to do what's right. You want to have integrity. But at the same time, you still have that fire, that animal in you that if it has to come out, it can. So I believe that being a nice guy doesn't just mean that you're a pushover or a doormat. I believe that you stand up for what's right and you fight the right causes and you put yourself out there and you be bold so that others can also gain that confidence to walk the same path that you're walking. So I believe that nice guys can finish first. Absolutely.
Love it. Great finisher. Guys, comment below what you think about this podcast. If it brought any value to you, subscribe, like, you know what to do. I'll see you guys in the next one.